All right, so we're going to start our first panel session. We have a panel of three. It's called Automation in Itad Services. If everyone doesn't mind, can you start grabbing a seat? Just a quick little info about the session. Itad has been around for a few decades, but some firms have stepped up their capabilities to engage enterprise clients in new ways. That's what this session is about. I'm very honored to be able to introduce Reich Sandlin, founder and CEO at River Vista Partners, Russ Ernst, Executive Vice President of Products and Technology at Blanco, and Brooks Hoffman, Principal at Iron Mountain. It's very nice to have these gentlemen here. They're mic'd up, and they're going to take it from there.
All right.
Good luck.
Thank you. Clicker.
And you need your clicker.
All right.
There you go.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us today. I'm really honored to be on stage with these two guys. They've been around this industry for a long time, like me, I guess. Our gray hairs show it. Russ with Blanco is really leading the charge in technology, in automation, and as well as in data erasure. We've had some good conversations about kind of the bleeding edge of things you're looking at, which is really exciting. I can't wait to hear some more on that. Brooks has been in the industry for a long time with Lifespan, and now Iron Mountain is really leading the charge at Iron Mountain for Itad.
My boss might take issue with that.
But so it's great to have them here with me. Let's see if I can get this to cycle. There we go. So a little bit about me real quick. I started in the automotive industry, worked for Verizon for a number of years on wireless technology development, was part of the Integra roll-up in Itad back in the late 2000s, sold to PE firm, which then sold to Arrow Electronics. So I'm one of many that have worked for Arrow that's in the room. And then I moved to High Tech Assets and helped sell that to another private equity firm. Along the way, I've also been involved in a lot of volunteer activities with the R2 Technical Advisory Committee, the Rios Board of Directors, ISRI, IATAM, and I guess I should put Itad Summit on there now. So it is rewarding to do that. But what I'm doing today is consulting, helping other companies chart their path, figure out how to grow, how to scale, how to implement excellence in their operations. So, there we are. Itad Services, as we heard a moment ago, they've been largely the same for several decades. But some firms today are breaking out of that box. They are challenging the status quo. They're innovating. These two gentlemen here have innovated. And so we want to talk about that a bit. So how do we bring that technology? How do we bring advances in digital, what we're seeing on the web, what we're seeing in use every day, to the forefront in Itad Services? Because that next generation of Itad is digital. It's not just handling hardware and sending a spreadsheet to a client. It's much more than that. So it's exciting to see what we're doing there. So as we think about automation, we need to think about what the benefits are, right? So internal to our business, we'll start with that. We have Itad's, we have systems that we want to integrate, right? So it's no longer we have a warehouse management system, and we have an ERP system and a financial system, and we've got the data wipe solutions and this and that. We're seeing much more integration across those different platforms. They could be a single platform, or we may have 2 or 3 platforms, but there's integration. They're talking to each other, which reduces errors, it reduces mismatches in data, and really makes the internal processes work better. And then we're also seeing automation applied, where we're automating processes, automating data gathering, automating workflows to reduce waste, reduce labor waste and process waste. Externally, as we think about that, we've got clients, right? So we are enabling self-service for Itad clients. And we'll hear Brooks talk about that a little bit. And then we're integrating with client systems. So we're able to, to actually tie into an enterprise ITAM system and update that automatically. Those red arrows should probably go both directions because they talk to us as well. Right, so we're seeing that integration have advantages for both parties. What are the end goals? Well, internally, it's operational excellence. It's as we automate these solutions, as we have clarity, transparency, and integrity of the data that we're managing, then we can drive excellence within our facilities. Externally, we're talking about market differentiation. If you are implementing best practices in systems and in technology, then now you can stand out to your clients in a new way. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. There we go. Jumped too far ahead. Paul, what have I done? There we go. Yeah, somehow I paged forward. There we go. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Russ. Russ with Blanco, if you can introduce yourself and tell us about IBR and what Blanco's doing.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much, Reich, and thanks for the opportunity to be here today. Really happy to be on this stage with Brooks and with Reich today. And as Reich mentioned, in the Itad industry, there's so much that's happening beyond just a single data erasure or a single device diagnostic. So I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about the automation that we can provide across all of your internal systems. Before I get to that, though, again, my name is Russ Ernst. I'm the Executive Vice President of Products and Technology at Blanco. I've been with Blanco for about 5.5 years now, setting product strategy and having those resources available to execute on that strategy. But I've been in software product development for over 20 years. Most recently, even before that, in security software products, a lot like what John was talking about in the keynote this morning, focusing on cybersecurity from the software standpoint. But taking that data security approach and thinking about that in this Itad space has been incredibly vital in thinking about our own product strategy at Blanco. And what Blanco provides is beyond just the tactical data erasure or the tactical device diagnostics, but really empowering Itads to think about how best to process those devices throughout your environment. Blanco's the leading provider of these software solutions in data sanitization and device diagnostics. Been in the industry for over 20 years and really that leading provider. But again, really partnering with our Itad customers to think beyond just the tactical management of each individual device. So really happy to be here today to talk about automation within the Itad environment and what we call intelligent business routing. And I'll talk more about what we mean by that. There we go. So what are some of the drivers of automation in the Itad space today? There are a lot of them, but right at the top of the list is probably around high labor costs. And especially given the COVID pandemic year, I think we're all experiencing some issues around being able to find labor, retain labor, scale up labor, and then the changes around the higher prices for labor. So this is a major impact in terms of how do you deploy labor the most efficiently in your Itad environment to be able to respond to fluxes in those devices that come in. So much of the processes today in the Itad environment are manual processes. I mean, beyond just triggering an individual device diagnostic or erasure, physically moving devices around within the environment. There are many inconsistent processes that are happening from operator to operator or from station to station. So trying to maintain consistency of your operations is incredibly challenging. The high level of human error. We all know that it takes a lot of time to train an entry-level employee to be able to process these devices effectively. Because at the end of the day, we're responsible for the liability of any of the data that might be on that asset after it leaves the processing facility. And business process management is a key part here. It's beyond just processing a single device, but it's processing all those devices in a consistent way and in an efficient way where you can cut the slack out of that process on an ongoing basis is incredibly vital. And of course, this provides a competitive advantage. It provides a platform for innovation, and you can use that data in a much more simplified way to prove your compliance. So what is intelligent business routing? Intelligent business routing from Blanco is really our business process management solution for managing these disparate processes within the Itad environment. And the two main goals that we provide with IBR are to have that process customization and automation, and to have integration with other tools and solutions. And we know, and I'll get into some of the use cases here, some key use cases here in a moment, but we know that it's important to have that consistency in processes when we're talking specifically about the device diagnostics and the erasure, but it's also really important if you're thinking more broadly about improving your process across the board, that you may need to call in for other systems, your ERP system or your asset management system or your warehouse management system to give a broader picture of the state of that asset before it goes on for resale. So what are some of those processing challenges, and what can we do with intelligent business routing to address that? And I'm not going to read this line by line, but it starts off with labor, as I mentioned. Many manual processes that need to take place, moving that around, having the consistency with the device diagnostics and the data sanitization, device grading and doing that in a consistent way is always a challenge. Having inconsistent processing, which results in inconsistent results. A high level of human error in the processing or inefficient processes which don't cover all the steps that are necessary in a flow. And so what we do with intelligent business routing is, from the very beginning, is working with your operations management team and mapping out what the ideal process should be. And once that's defined and you have software logic behind that, you're doing it in a consistent way. You're automating that workflow, eliminating those manual processes as much as possible, standardizing the process for consistent results, automation with little to no interaction, increasing operator efficiency, and then quickly and comprehensively processing those assets according to all business needs, specific to each customer that's providing those assets as well. And one of the keys here too is that by having this consistency in the process, in your internal process, it makes the flex time and bringing in new employees that much easier, and your training time that much less to get them up to speed, because you're relying on the process itself. You're not relying on training an individual operator to do those tasks. So with that, I'm going to cover 3 basic use cases. Again, the beauty of having a workflow-based business process management solution is that this is infinitely configurable to any Itad that's out there today. So what I'm going to cover are 3 basic use cases, and these are available as templates out of the box. But again, think of these as just a starting point for any type of process that you could imagine. And I'll start with erasure fallback. It's a very simple workflow. It looks a little complex, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to solve here is it's a completely enclosed issue that has to do with one asset at one time, and that if you have an erasure algorithm that fails on that specific asset for whatever reason, instead of having an operator walk up to that and saying, why did this fail and I need to initiate another process, the software takes over and says, look for a failure, and if it fails, fall back to a second algorithm and process that way. Very simple, but it's encapsulated in this step so that you're taking away that operator's time from having to monitor that asset and completely check up on it, and if they see a big failure somewhere, to walk up to it and take action on it manually. This just happens seamlessly and shows up in the report afterwards on exactly what happened. And it completely encapsulated in this simple workflow. Another major use case we see in the Itad environment is cut line. So whatever your cut line may happen to be, whatever decision point you may want to use in your Itad, it could be on RAM size, it could be on the type of graphics card that's in that machine, but whatever that happens to be, as soon as you plug in that device, we can do a check for that. I thought I had that first check you see there, condition 4 gigabytes of RAM. You may have that as your cut line to say, if it's less than 4 gig of RAM, I'm not going to take any other action on it. I'm just going to do a data sanitization and move it off for resale. If it has more than 4 gig, now you might want to do additional diagnostics. You want to have a broader picture of what's included in that machine so you can try to attain a higher resale value. And that's completely encapsulated within this workflow. Completely seamlessly, the operator doesn't have to take any action. All they do is they start the process, and through the software, it's going through the workflow automatically. You can see I'm going from simple to a little bit more complex. And this is the last one. Again, I'm not going to go line by line in here. But the third key use case I want to talk about is in a cosmetic grading. And we know that cosmetic grading is highly subjective from operator to operator. And we know that this becomes much more challenging when you're talking about a broad amount of assets that are coming through the environment. So what we can do through intelligent business routing is by providing a consistent set of questions, by providing outreach into your ERP systems. This can start to guide that process on how that asset actually gets graded. And all along the way, you can set in different checkpoints to say if there is something that's found immediately, it gets pushed off to a second process or it gets pushed off to a second channel until it filters all the way up to the top of your grade A devices that get the most visibility. You're looking back, again, through a JSON or through an API call, seeing that has the highest retention value of that device. You want to give the most attention to that device. And so you're, again, getting the most resale possible value out of that device. Again, in a completely automated way, taking away that subjectivity of each individual operator. Those are just 3 use cases. Again, it's a completely infinitely configurable system. Out of the gate, it's essentially like a WYSIWYG editor, drag and drop these individual boxes. It's up to you to configure how you'd see fit. But really the power that we see is it's providing that automation for those problems that Reich was talking about, that when you're talking about the changes in what's happening in this industry and in the Itad space specifically. And the power behind this too is that you can collect data about what's happening with that asset at each point along the way. And once you have that data, you can now refine and optimize your process as well, minimizing the process time on each asset and getting that asset out to market as soon as possible. So what are some of the benefits, just in summary? We increase efficiency by dramatically increasing the throughput. We increase consistency by having the same process followed over and over again by all of those assets. You can improve your innovation. Think about your test environment now, where you can set aside a small environment and continually be changing this workflow and optimizing the workflow. And by the way, as soon as you change it one time, you can deploy that workflow out consistently across your entire warehouse, across all your locations throughout the world, and have the consistent process guaranteed across all those locations. And then finally, minimize your disruption. Really virtually eliminate downtime when you've got operators that are asking questions about what's the next keystroke they need to put onto this device, or what's the next process they need to put onto it if there's a failed erasure. All that is handled automatically through through intelligent business routing. So with that, that's the end of my quick spiel on this. And so I think next up is going to be Brooks.
Yeah,
so
Brooks.
To talk more about the external systems.
Which button?
Right one right there.
Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. I'm Brooks Hoffman. As Reich mentioned, I'm a member of the product management team at Iron Mountain. Work on our secure IT asset disposition service. Before coming to Iron Mountain about 5 years ago, I was the chief financial officer and one of the founders of Lifespan. I know a lot of people in this room know Doug Adamson. He was my business partner. And long before that, he was my drinking buddy. So we go back a long ways. So I've been in the industry about 18 years. going to talk today about Iron Mountain's secure Itad management system. But before I do that, I need to give you a little bit of background about Iron Mountain and how we approach this business. So Iron Mountain is primarily a collector of IT assets. We have a very large fleet of vehicles, over 3,500 just in North America, but we're in 50 countries around the world in addition to that. We use our secure logistics to collect the assets from the customer site, and then we deliver them to our downstream partners who are located in these countries, who do the actual recycling or data erasure, remarketing, et cetera. We got into this business about 8 years ago, and initially, we had a lot of different systems internally across the organization, and they were not really geared for Itad. They were more based on Iron Mountain's legacy businesses, like a lot of you think of us, they think of record storage or secure shredding, et cetera. So we had a lot of disparate systems. And we were really approaching this from a manual perspective. We were using spreadsheets and emails and phone calls and having to navigate a lot of different systems, and it was very inefficient. So we came together and thought about, okay, what do we want to do? How can we create a platform to automate and scale this business that's really going to serve two purposes? One, to provide the customer with an excellent experience, to make it easy for them to do business with us, to place orders, to access reporting, to monitor the status of their projects as close to real time as possible. And then how can we have a tool where we can manage each individual project, monitor SLA compliance, and know where everything stands. So we had a bunch of requirements, sort of listed them on this page. This was the wish list. Wanted it to be secure, easy to use, good customer service, one-stop shop, ensure our secure chain of custody, which is kind of a core value proposition for Iron Mountain, and it had to be cost effective. And then it had to really integrate all of these different functions you see over on the right-hand side. Whether it's customer sales, customer care, or our shredding, or transportation, or our downstream partners. We really wanted it to cut across as many different functions as possible. So pretty tall order. But we went ahead and developed this platform. We used a third party to help us develop it and integrate it. And really what it does, and you can see this schematic, it's a little busy, but what it does is it lets us centralize all the data across multiple vendors. So we use different downstream partners in different geographies. Coordinates these 7 different systems within Iron Mountain, pulls the data from those systems, and then links our internal departments, whether it's logistics or customer care, finance, and provides a really seamless experience to the customer, as seamless as possible. So again, it's one consolidated view to the customer, so when they log in, they can see all the business that they're doing with Iron Mountain across wherever they may be doing that, and they can look at past projects, they can look at things that are currently being processed. It's very flexible, so we do use a number of different downstream partners. They all have different systems. We had to make it easy for them to transmit data to us based on that. And basically, it allows us, because it's so flexible, it allows us to really work with kind of the best in breed and most cost-effective partners in each geography. And it's automated. It's automated our process. So again, we're no longer relying on all these emails and paperwork and spreadsheets and things that get lost and really aren't consistent. So that's kind of a high-level schematic of how the system works. And as I said earlier, it really is 2 things. It's a customer portal, right? It's in the cloud. They can log in on the internet. They have a secure login, and they can, go to their dashboard. They can click on these graphs and tables so that they can drill down and see the status of different projects, things that have been completed, things that are in process. If the customer needs some support or doesn't know how to do something, needs help, Iron Mountain users can impersonate the user and log in and work with them kind of step by step. So it provides this order entry, this customer self-service function. It does have a number of dashboards that can be customized so that they can understand, just at a glance when they first log in where they stand. And then it has a number of automated notifications. So if they want to get notified when it's 2 days before a pickup, or they want to get notified when a certificate's been issued, again, these notifications have been automated so that they're being reached out and told when something's happening on the system. A little more detail on the order form. So we can customize the questions on the order form through the user interface. So if a customer wants a certain form of order where, let's say, a purchase order number is required, or they're not permitting remarketing, only recycling, we can customize it to that. And one of the things I should mention about the system is that when we did the initial release, we took it out to some beta customers and we got feedback from them. And we worked with them based on that feedback to continuously improve the system. So each month we're issuing new releases and enhancements based on customer feedback. So it's been a very customer-driven and customer-friendly system. The customers can attach intent lists, so if they have an asset list that they want us to match up when we show up on site and scan, they can do that. They can also attach photos so that we have a very clear understanding when we show up to a site what type of equipment's going to be there, what sort of tools and packing supplies and things like that we're going to need to bring with us. In terms of the dashboard, again, they can do all kinds of internal reporting, self-service. They can cut and slice and dice the data any way they want. They can pull up their audit reports and photos of equipment, and they can view the chain of custody details so they can see what happens to the assets over time. They can customize their reporting, and they can schedule the sort of the timing of that reporting. So if they want to get reports on a weekly basis, monthly, quarterly, whatever it is, it can be customized based on their preferences. Last point I made about notifications. So they can sign up for the different notifications that are important to them, depending on their function. And they can customize even the subject line and the email intro so that it sort of prompts them to think about and know what the email is, and hopefully it's not going into a spam folder. But the notification piece is a very important part of the customer care experience, because now they don't have to think about their Itad projects, and they don't have to think about the status. They're going to get an automated notification when different things and events that are important to them happen. And I believe that is my last slide.
All right. Well,
Give that back to you, I guess.
Sure.
you can have it.
I'll hold it.
Thanks, Brooks. I think that's the presentations. We'd like to open it up for questions now. I'll kick it off with a couple here. You've both described some of the real advantages of these integrated systems to your clients and how you interact with them as well as internally. I guess, Russ, how challenging is it to actually integrate some of these things, some of these pieces together? Your IBR and your data sanitization information needs to flow somewhere. Mm-hmm. So how do you tie into other systems?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, this is an area where Blanco is leveraging a lot of experience in this field. And this is a technology that didn't just get invented last week. It's actually evolved from some of our mobile processing technologies. Back in September of 2017 is when we filed the original patent on this technology. But it's evolved over time with working with our customers in solving customer problems. So it's beyond just looking at it from a commodity, from an individual action, but working with our customers, working with Itads, working with mobile processors to understand what is the problem they're trying to solve and mapping that out from a business process standpoint. And then it's much easier to understand that from a workflow perspective. And then it's complete, like drag and drop, and then filling in boxes, and then making API calls. And it's fairly straightforward, it's well documented, but we're here to help along the way too. You know, since we have so many years of experience with this, we can certainly work with our Itad customers and mobile processors to implement it completely.
Okay. All right. Brooks, you know, in terms of tying into your customer systems, you know, some of them have IT asset management systems of their own that need to be updated by the reports that you provide. What sorts of systems have you guys had experience tying into, and any suggestions on how these folks should move forward?
Yeah, so again, one of the key attributes of the system and things that we've striven for is flexibility. And we do interface. We have a number of APIs that we make available to customers. So for instance, if they want us to interface with ServiceNow, they can place an order through ServiceNow. They don't even have to log in to the portal. So we try to make it as easy for us to integrate with customers' legacy systems as possible. And the same is true on the downstream side, on the vendor side, so that, you know, we realize that we're dealing with different systems across the board, and we want to be able to pull the data out of those systems in as automated a fashion as we can, so you don't have to rekey it, there's less prone to error, and it's more automated and expedited.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up ServiceNow as well too, right? Because when you think of automation in a broader scheme, any software solution is essentially the first step of automation, because you're using software to automate a specific task. And then when you throw on a business process management on top of that, that's the second level of process automation. And then ServiceNow is an excellent enterprise example of business process orchestration as the next level of automation on top of that. So it's really a multi-layered automation approach.
And I've heard some companies are using middleware to help bridge those connections, but you've also had, you know, there's also examples where you're doing more of a direct connection between systems. So that's good. Opening to questions from the audience. Anyone have anything on their mind? Yes, in the middle and the back.
Yeah, Brooks, I wanted to ask you, does Iron Mountain basically use this platform that you have internally for your Iron Mountain clients, or do you make it available for, you know, non-Iron Mountain clients, data centers?
Well, you need to be an Iron Mountain customer in order to take advantage of the system, but we do have a variety of different customers. Some of our customers are data centers. Some of our customers actually colo in our data centers that we operate. But typically, if you're a program customer, meaning you have a recurring program and a rate card and agreement in place with Iron Mountain, you get access to the system.
Brooks, you know, what percentage of your customers do you think actually use the portal, use that connection to the system?
It's a pretty high percentage because there are obviously a number of advantages. You know, one is that with the rate card, they don't have to come to us for a custom quote on every single project. So it's funny, when I got to Iron Mountain, I learned this new term called OTO, which means one-time only project. And they were making a big differentiation between program or recurring customers and these OTOs. And it really was a head scratcher for me, because when I was at Lifespan, every customer was considered a program customer. Why wouldn't you want to do recurring business with your customers? Why would you want to do these one-off projects? So we've really made a concerted effort over the last few years to convert these OTO customers to recurring program customers, and they get better pricing, for example, they get access to the portal, so there's a lot of incentives. So it was a lower number to begin with, but I would say that the majority of our customers are now program customers, and they're using the portal.
That's great. Other questions? Yeah, back in the back.
Are these platforms cloud-based? And if they are, how does data management, is that internally handled? Or is that also cloud-based?
So generally,
The question revolves around access control and security of the data.
So I can tell you our system, we built it on the Azure infrastructure. So it's in the cloud. It's an SQL database. There's a lot of security around access control. There's different levels of permissions you can set. You can have a super user that has access to everything. You can limit visibility if you have different users in different geographies that can only look at certain information that's relevant to their particular geography or mandate, if you will.
Yeah, and ours is very similar. It's a cloud-first architecture implemented in, we use AWS instead of Azure, but cloud-first. And then we also have the ability to do data segregation by customer, by user, very strong user access controls around each of the individual environments and instances. That's also regional as well. I mean, I know that there are regional concerns about keeping data in specific areas. I know Germany is a big one for that, where if you have data that's being generated in Germany, for example, we ensure that there's local storage through AWS services. I'm sure the same is true in Azure.
Yeah, same is true. We're very conscious of GDPR and data protection.
Exactly.
Good. Other questions? Yes.
Software automation, has your team seen much in the way of hardware automation as far as sort of automating the way of sort or processing, for example, via?
Oh, sure. I was just interested if your team had seen any developments with regard to hardware automation in addition to software automation with regard to sort processing.
Yeah, I can take a first stab at that one, and it's a broader topic in reverse in talking about robotics integration and hardware automation within those environments. It's very challenging because the size of the assets are constantly changing, the type of the asset is constantly changing. From a software automation standpoint, though, we see that as just another integration point. You know, whether we're using our sort of command and control workflow management to reach out to hardware automation or through another software tool or through, you know, sending instructions up to a monitor to instruct an operator to do something. So it's just seen as yet another integration point for us.
And I would just say, again, we're not doing a lot of hardware processing because we're more of a collector. However, one exception is in the case of on-site scanning. So when we pull up to a customer, all of our drivers are equipped with hand scanners. They can scan the assets and they can upload that information in real time to the portal so that that information is made available to the client almost immediately. And then we can also, as I mentioned earlier, we can reconcile against any intent list that they provide.
Great. Any other questions? All right, I have one more for you guys, and then I think we'll wrap. We've described the advantages. We've definitely talked about, how great it is to have these systems available to our clients and our downstreams and our businesses as well as our operators inside the business. But what are some of the pitfalls? If someone out here wants to implement some of these automated solutions, what do they need to watch out for and be aware of before they walk into it?
Yeah, I'll start with that. And just understanding your own business is probably the most important part of it. And it really requires an operation to mature themselves, to understand what it is they're trying to accomplish. Because once you understand on paper what your own process is, then it's much easier to translate that into an automated workflow. So that in and of itself can be a challenge in just saying, I'm not going to fly by the seat of my pants and just process as it comes in. You really have to understand what are the problems you're trying to solve, what are the inputs, what are the expected outputs, where are the sources of the data, where do you expect to integrate these data points, and then what do you want to accomplish with the data afterwards. The benefits far outweigh any of the downsides that you may have in terms of trying to understand your business. Because once you have these systems in place, you let them run for a while, you now have access to so much more data that you can use to further optimize your processes and provide that much more benefit out to your own end customers.
And I would add to that, understanding what the customer wants and working very closely with the customer. If you take the field of dreams approach, if you build it, they will come, you're going to be sadly disappointed. And I say that having really enjoyed the baseball game that they played recently at that Field of Dreams Stadium. But you may have a notion of what you think's important or how the system should be architected, but ultimately it's the client that's going to be using it. So I think it's very important to, when you kind of start with an initial design, that you constantly enhance and upgrade and modify that based on the customer feedback that you receive. I'd also just mention that the gentleman's point about data security and being aware, that's sort of a given, right? It's got to be secure. But also this issue of certain data within certain geographies needs to stay there and be housed there due to regulations like GDPR. And there are some pretty stringent, if your system is going to be anywhere accessible outside of the United States, or you're going to have data that pertains to, let's say, citizens of the EU, you may think, oh, I'm a U.S. company, I don't have to worry about GDPR. That is absolutely wrong. So you need to be conscious of the international regulations around data privacy and protection.
Oh, fair enough. That's good. Well, I want to thank both of you for your expertise and bringing that to the fore this morning. I want to thank Itad Summit for hosting and what we're doing here. My business is helping companies figure out how to scale, how to grow, and understand what systems to put in place. Russ, you and the Blanco team, really are feet on the ground in helping them implement automation, implement strict security practices around their data. And Brooks, I know you've been a mentor and a partner to a lot of people over the years, and that's a great part of your character in helping people, helping others understand how to be better at this. So I want to thank both of you, and I think we're around for questions or individual conversation after this. So,
thank you very much.
all right.
Thank you.
Keep watching over during sun.